Welcome to Get Paid for Your Pad, the definitive show on Airbnb hosting, featuring the best advice on how to maximize profits from your Airbnb listing, as well as real-life experiences from Airbnb hosts all over the world. Welcome. We are your hosts, Josefa Kapadia and Jasper Rivers.
Get paid for your pad. 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 Get paid for your pad.
Welcome everyone to the next episode of Get Paid for Your Pad, episode number 95 today. And today we have a former guest who's also already been on the show in episode 77, I believe. His name is John, and he is the lead of growth for Pearlshare, which basically means that he's in charge of looking after the hosts that have signed up with Pearlshare, which is an app that you can use to provide local recommendations to your Airbnb hosts. So, John, welcome to the show. Welcome back.
Thank you very much for having me. It's great to be back on the show. I've listened to most of the episodes in between, and they're all worth going back and listening to. So if you haven't listened already, please do go back and listen to Jasper's back catalogue, because there is a nugget. There's at least 2 or 3 things that I've taken from every single show that I've then gone on to speak to someone else about. So I think you're doing a great job. So keep it up, Jasper.
Oh, thanks for that. And thanks for coming back on the show. Today, we're going to talk about what's new in Airbnb land. We're going to try something new. Instead of doing a particular interview about one subject, we're just going to go through a bunch of things that are going on right now with regards to Airbnb. And there's a lot going on. And John actually recently started sending out this Airbnb bulletin where he kind of compiles a bunch of news stories, which is really convenient for me, because then I don't have to do it. So thanks a lot for doing that.
That's all right. If you find me on Twitter, if you go to John M.A. Bauer on Twitter, at the moment it's my pinned tweet. I can't guarantee if you're listening to this way in the future that it's still going to be there, but the pinned tweet is where you can go and sign up to that email list. And we went out to just under 200 hosts on Tuesday, first email. And so far, we've seen 60% open rates, and 20% of the people that it was sent to have clicked on it so far. So there's obviously some valuable stuff in there. I wasn't expecting a reaction like that, which is why I'm sort of very happy to tell you about it. And yeah, it's something that I think has been that there's been a gap for that sort of thing for a little while. And as Jasper said at the start, it's my job to sort of be looking after the hosts that are using Pearlshare. And, I'm already doing research in that area anyway. It makes sense to just summarize it and send it out. So, yeah, it's something that has given me an insight into the sort of Airbnb and wider sort of holiday rental world. And it's something that I want to pass on to anybody that's interested. So please do go and sign up to that list if you're listening to this right now.
Awesome. So let's dive into all the stuff that's going on. You just mentioned some things to me, and some of the stuff I already knew, some I didn't. So I'm really excited to dive in and see what's going on. So
good. So am I. And so the way I see it at the moment, Jasper, Airbnb and that whole holiday rental space is going through a number of changes. Airbnb themselves, being the market leader, they're running a lot of new initiatives to get their brand out there and to get more people to come and stay with them. And they've introduced a load of new features and a load of new sort of initiatives in order to do that. But then on the flip side of that, it seems that governments around the world and governments in the major cities that Airbnb is kind of known for seem to be doing work to sort of, I don't want to say like shut them down, but that does seem to be the effect that the new sort of laws and regulations and things that are being rolled out across the world are doing. So hopefully we can touch on a bit of both sides. Where would you like to start?
Well, let's start in Europe, because there's a lot going on. I think a while back Berlin implemented some pretty strict rules regarding to Airbnb hosting. Now, yes. I myself, I'm experiencing some issues here in Amsterdam because technically, I'm not allowed to rent out my entire place because I don't have a permit. And in Amsterdam, you're only allowed to rent out for 60 days if you don't have a permit. So it seems like the local authorities are stepping up their efforts in terms of enforcement, which makes me feel a little bit nervous. So I'm actually looking at other places and potentially moving my whole Airbnb business abroad. But you mentioned Paris to me as well. I think they're doing some sort of vote.
Yeah, so let's just recap sort of the current state of play in Europe. So I think the important distinction here is that for anyone renting, I think there are three kinds of room that you can rent on Airbnb, right? You can rent out a shared room, a private room, or your entire house. Now, what we're about to talk about doesn't affect those first two. It doesn't affect it if you're just renting out a room in your place. All of these regulations seem to only affect if you're renting out your entire place and you're not there while you're doing it. So Berlin sort of seemed to shut down anybody renting out their entire place. In England, you can, particularly in London, you can rent out your entire home for 90 days in a year. And in Paris, I think it's currently 120 days that you can rent that out for. No, sorry, in Paris, it's currently unlimited, but they're about to introduce this thing, or they're voting on this thing which will enforce 120 days only, which, while that is still, a big chunk of the year, it will affect anybody renting out their entire place, and people that are relying on that sort of income coming in from either their own property because they're off traveling, something akin to what you have done in the past, Jasper, or people that have like a second place that they're renting out on Airbnb and using to subsidize, or they are professional Airbnbers and they have a properties that they're renting out. So it looks like, and I spoke to someone the other day, a host in Paris, and she was telling me that she's worried about this. She's worried about how it's going to affect her, and I think it's very right to worry about it. If your income, if you are reliant on that income, then it reduces down what you could earn in a year by 2/3, right? 120 days. So I'm not really sure what that's going to mean for Paris, because I've dug up some data recently, and at the moment in Paris there are I looked at Paris, London, New York, Los Angeles, Sydney, Madrid, Amsterdam, Barcelona. I don't think that's currently the top 10 by number of listings, but they are all major cities when it comes to Airbnb. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I think right. Those are definitely some of the biggest ones.
Yeah, and Paris is definitely the biggest. Now, looking at Paris is looking at the split of different kinds of property in Paris. In 2016, May 2016, there are 35,000 entire homes listed, right, compared to only just under 6,000 private rooms. Okay, so that split is massively weighted towards the entire home side. If you compare that to something like London, if you compare that to New York, which has nearly as many properties in total, the split is much more even between entire homes and private rooms. I think they're in New York in 2016, there are 17,000 entire homes listed on Airbnb and 14,500 private rooms. So if this goes ahead, if what they're proposing goes ahead in Paris, it's going to mean a seismic shift in the Airbnb market there, right? Because all of those entire homes are either going to be shut down because the hosts don't want to deal with that, and they're going to stop doing it, or they're going to be massively limited by how long they can legally rent their Airbnb property for. So if that was to, if you were going to put that, if that same situation was happening in New York, you would see much less of an effect because the split is more evenly distributed.
Right. I have two questions, John. First of all, are they gonna release some sort of amount of of permits like in Amsterdam for full-time hosts?
I believe so. Yeah, I believe. I don't know if it's like a limited number, but you will need to register. You will need to register your holiday rental home with the local council or with the Paris authorities, and you will only be able to sign up. From what I've heard from the Parisian host, I haven't checked this. I don't know if this is true, but you will only be able to list on Airbnb in Paris if you have that kind of registration number. And then the French authorities are actually going to roll that out to all cities with a population of more than 200,000 inhabitants. So it's not just Paris that this affects. This is the whole of France that this is going to go on to affect. So, yeah, as I say, the potential for the potential effect that it's going to have on Airbnb in France is massive.
Right. And do you need a permit for the 120 days or not?
I'm not sure whether from the conversation I had, I think you need a permit, not a permit to do it at all. And the reason for that is that the French authorities, before, it was up to you to declare the earnings that you made on any Airbnb income. But I think what this is leading towards is the French authorities having full transparency of how many of those properties are being rented and when they're rented. And that means on an individual basis that you will be taxed anyway. Like it won't be a case that it's left to you to declare it. They will have full visibility of that. So I think that's the aim with what they're trying to do. And I mean, while that might be a bad thing if people are trying to, I don't know, if you're doing something slightly illegal and not quite declaring all of the money that you've earned through it, for whatever reason, then obviously that's going to have an effect on you. But actually, if you think about that, and if you think about the French authorities having full transparency and having full visibility of all that stuff, it might be a net positive effect, because they will then understand, they will have, as opposed to just the figures that Airbnb report to them, they will have a real idea of the occupancy rates and of the going rate for rooms and that sort of thing. And, from when I went to the Airbnb Open in Paris, the French authorities seem to be working very closely with Airbnb to the point where, the deputy mayor was on stage and he opened the Airbnb Open while we were there in Paris. So, I don't know whether there's been a bit of a U-turn and the people in power have changed their minds, or whether, it's just something that has got some bad press. But I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of torn between the two, because whenever I've rented my place on Airbnb, we've rented it as an entire home, but that's because it was a self-contained unit. We were still next door, and so I don't know how I'd be affected in the future if we went back to listing our property on Airbnb again. I mean, how do you feel about it, Jasper? Because if you're thinking about shutting down and moving, the laws in Amsterdam sound much stricter. It sounds like it's really controlled, 60 days.
Well, yeah, that's one thing, but the other thing is the enforcement, because it's not so much about the rules. I mean, to be honest with you, I don't really mind breaking the rules, Yeah. I always feel like
rules are made to be broken, right? They're made to be broken.
Yeah, I mean, it's, the way that I see it is like, I own this house. It's my house. I worked hard for it. I've paid for it with my own money. And I feel like I should be able to do whatever I want with it and until somebody stops me. So, instead of asking for permission, I found in life that asking, just doing stuff, and then, if somebody stops you, then so be it, is a more effective and productive approach to getting things done. So, the question that I have is, okay, these rules are all, it's all cool, but are they actually going to enforce it? Because that's the more important question to me.
Yeah. And really interesting. Go on.
And that's in Amsterdam. That's really the shift that has taken place. Before, there was maybe a couple guys at the city hall who were, if they get a complaint, they might go have a look and give you a warning or something. Whereas now they hired IT people to scrape the Airbnb website and to try and find all these different Airbnb listings. And I've heard stories about people, the police and the fire department actually going into houses, breaking open the door, changing the locks, and shutting people down.
No.
And so, that's a big shift, I think. And I don't know if I keep doing it. I don't know how long I could still do it, but I might want to just find a place where I can do what I want and not have to worry about somebody like shutting down my place, because you got to imagine if somebody shuts down your place and you have tons of bookings lined up, those are all going to be cancellations on your Airbnb profile. So your whole Airbnb reputation goes down the drain.
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about it like that. So if you've already got bookings for into the summer, of course, that could have a huge effect on people's reputations.
Yeah, because think about when you move to a different location. So let's say I move my Airbnb business to a different country.
Yeah.
Now, I could keep my listing in Amsterdam active for the time being, and then when I create my new listing in the other country, it will show that I have 250 or 300 reviews, for my other listing, and so that will give me a lot of trust for me to get my new listing up and running, right?
Yeah.
Now, if my other profile is full of like cancellations, then obviously that's something that I don't want to show really. So then in that case, I would just have to start over completely from scratch. So I think, that's definitely a consideration. I'd rather step out of this in a controlled way and just kind of like move my business somewhere else smoothly than being shut down. And the other problem I have with this is, I travel. So if I'm in the US, like this summer, I'm going to spend like 2 or 3 months in the US. And so, if they shut me down while I'm in the US, now suddenly I have to go back to Holland. I have to sort all this stuff out. If I want to move my business, I have to sell my house. I have to buy a house somewhere else. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that, that's not an easy thing to do. You can't get that done in a couple of weeks' time. So I'm going to have a long period where I'm basically not doing anything.
Yeah.
Whereas if I do it in a controlled manner, then I can kind of like time it right. I can do some research first, see where I want to buy a new place, and then sell my house in Amsterdam. And then as soon as I get the money, I'm ready to buy something else. And, maybe get my listing up and running in within like 4 weeks or so. I think that should be possible if you plan it correctly, but you can't plan if you get shut down unexpectedly.
No, that's right. Yeah. I mean, I think you're right. I think it's worth considering. It's always worth trying to consider how you can stay ahead of these sorts of issues, because, as you say, the last thing you need is, if you're out of the country, is the immediate problem of someone ringing you up saying, people have just come in, shut us down, and I'm left here. Where can I go and stay? Because it's still your responsibility, right? It's written into the terms of service. It's your responsibility to rehome people. But yeah, I think the whole situation. I don't want to like get too negative on it, because I think that realistically across the rest of the world, the sort of thing that might happen in Paris, it might happen in every city in the world. But Airbnb, that it just means that the nature of Airbnb is going to change, and it might be a measurable effect, it might not. But I think what you're doing sounds very sensible. Just taking a look at your options elsewhere, and at the markets and at the places that maybe aren't quite as developed as an Airbnb city yet. I mean, where have you got your eyes on? Is there anywhere that you would say is particularly sort of liberal or?
Yeah, I'm actually looking at Chile in South America right now.
Wow, that's quite a change.
It is. Well, I've looked up. I've considered different options.
Okay.
And there's a few things that are great about Chile. First of all, it's a very liberal country. So they have a very liberal stance towards people doing business. They're very friendly to foreigners. So it's relatively easy to go out there and buy a property. Now, the other thing is properties are very affordable down there. So, you can probably get an apartment for about 50,000 euros. You can get a one bedroom apartment. And then also there's not a lot of taxes. It's fairly the process to buying a house and the property taxes is all pretty doable. And well, for me personally, there's another advantage because my sister-in-law is actually from Chile, so she has a lot of family down there in Santiago, and it's my brother has actually bought a house together with my sister-in-law. They've bought a house in Chile themselves, so for me it'll be easy to get my sister-in-law's family support, and it's always good to know some people on the ground, especially when you want to run your Airbnb listing remotely. Obviously, you need to have that support. So it would just be an easy location for me to expand to, or to flee to, so to speak. But then ideally, my ideal vision is that I would have maybe 2 or 3 houses in different locations around the world, where I would then go and stay for maybe 2 or 3 months out of the year. And then in that way, I would never have to pay for short-term accommodation anymore. Because now, if you stay somewhere for a couple of weeks or a month, it's, even Airbnbs are quite expensive compared to long-term rentals, right? Or compared to owning a home. So I would save myself a lot of money if I can just stay in my own place versus always having to pay for short-term accommodation.
Yeah. And, the situation that is going on and where authorities are cracking down all over the world, a lot of hosts, they're not really afraid of being shut down. They just want to know what they can do legally. They want to know what they can get away with and what is deemed okay. Because, for most people that do Airbnb, yourself included, I think it's about more than just the money. It's about the experience, and a lot of hosts that I speak to, they end up in some cases losing money when people come and stay with them, because it's about the experience and it's about the things that they're doing with the guests and the experiences that they have with the guests, which compels them to keep going. And even if you are making money on Airbnb and that's your goal and you're running it as a business, I think that there's a lot of people that I've spoken to as well that are in that situation, and they say that the reason that they are continuing to do Airbnb and continuing with it is because the people that come and stay with them through Airbnb are, it's like a different caliber of traveler. There are a lot of other sites that you can list on, and I've heard mixed things about a lot of different competitors, and I'm certainly not trying to talk rubbish about any of the competitors, because I think there's advantages and disadvantages to every platform. But it does appear to me that the people that travel as a guest using Airbnb are seeking a different kind of experience, and more than just somewhere that they can come and dump their bags for the weekend while they go out exploring. There's a lot of stories that I've heard about friendships being made, and that if you watch anything recently that Brian or Joe or Nate, any opportunity that they've had to speak publicly. I think Joe Gebbia recently did a TED talk about design. Brian Chesky recently did a video about their Live There campaign. And they're really going hard at the moment on that first story, that first Airbnb trip. And these 3 people came to live on airbeds. And then we made friends with them, and that's what this is all about. It's not about making money. There is the serious money side, the money making side to it, but that experience thing seems to be what they're really focusing on at the moment. And this Live There campaign that they're introducing right now, and I do, you've probably seen the TV adverts. There's been loads of TV adverts here in the UK, and they're going hard on social media with it. I've seen it on YouTube. Have you seen it, Jasper? You've seen this Live There campaign?
I have seen some of it, yeah.
And the things that they're introducing there, I think are really interesting. Some of the things that they're trying to do to make the experience even better. I'm just not seeing it from any of their competitors at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, how much have you seen? How much have you heard about this? Is this all new to you, the Live There stuff, or what do you know about what's going on? Because I can happily talk through all of it, but if you wanna,
no, please go ahead.
Yeah,
go ahead and let's talk about the changes that are coming up and what Airbnb is going to do to sort of reinforce the idea of not just using the house as a place to sleep, but really engaging in the local life.
Yeah, so what we've talked about so far is governments trying to control the way that Airbnb is being used. Airbnb, what they're working on at the moment is trying to become more integrated into the whole travel experience, right? So the way I see it is they've conquered, if you like, the homes of the hosts, and they've conquered that whole booking experience. But at the moment, you check in, you check out. Airbnb don't have much involvement in between unless something goes wrong. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Airbnb don't really talk to the guest at all during that time unless there's been some problem that they need to resolve, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
And what they seem to be doing at the moment is working on a series of ideas and a series of things that they're piloting, and a couple of things that they've announced that seem to be heading in that direction, and they want to take over that whole experience and really take control of that whole experience to try and make it much better as a guest so that you keep returning to Airbnb. So there have been two things that they have announced and confirmed that they are doing. And then I've heard about a couple of other things in the background that aren't necessarily public knowledge yet, but we can talk about because I won't name any sources. But the two things, if you go right now to Airbnb's website and you go to airbnb.com/live there, you'll see an announcement by Brian Chesky, CEO, who runs through a couple of the things that they're doing and some updates that apparently have launched in the app, but I don't think they've been rolled out across the world yet. So these are things that you either have already in the app, depending on where you are, or they're going to be coming very soon. Matching is part of that. Now, this is something that they're basically trying to match hosts and guests that have similar qualities, similar interests, similar behavior. He doesn't go into too much detail as to what exactly that means. And I don't think it's ever something that you're going to see, you're ever going to notice as a host or as a guest. But basically what we're talking about here is the algorithms that control which listings are shown to you when you do a search as a guest. Okay, so if you're a seasoned traveler and you've been using Airbnb and you've got a profile and you've stayed at a few different places versus someone new that hasn't stayed anywhere before, if we do exactly the same search, if I'm the person that's traveled a lot and you're the person that's never traveled before, and we do exactly the same search, it means we're going to see different results, and that will be based on the amount of money maybe that I've spent on Airbnb before, and the sort of price and the kind of trips that I'm looking for. It'll be based on the kind of accommodation I've stayed in. So they're expanding that, and they're letting you categorize your accommodation now. So I think one of the categories, for example, is castle. So, if someone has only stayed in castles, then maybe you're going to recommend them castles a bit higher up. But they're really working to make discovery of listings much, much more efficient. So as opposed to just a blind search, if I just search one particular part of London, as opposed to it just being relatively dumb and just showing me stuff that's been recently updated or people that have recently joined, it looks like they're really trying to step up that matching that's happening in the background. And obviously, if you log in with Facebook or you log in with Google or whatever, they can take data from that as well. And they probably are, and they're probably trying to match you with hosts and listings that you want to stay in. So what do you think of that? I mean, how you've hosted a lot more than I have. So like as a host, how do you think that something like that is going to affect you?
Well, I think this is really important when you are sharing the space with your host, right? Because then, having similar interests and enjoying similar activities, etc., is something that's really important, because you're actually going to meet the host. You're going to spend time together, probably. I think for people like myself who are renting remotely, like I don't even meet most of my guests, so that's kind of a different story. But one thing I've noticed, which is kind of like on the same topic, is that I recently did a search in San Francisco, and I noticed that all the listings are tagged now in the search results. So, for example, I'm just looking at some search results right now, and there's this one listing. It says modern, spacious Mission Terrace apartment. And then underneath the title, it says entire home apartment, the amount of stars and the amount of reviews. And then below that, there's three tags. It says residential, near public transport, and modern.
Right.
And I think those tags are the same ones that you find when you go to the review section. Because I think when you review a place as a guest, like Airbnb will ask you, like, what did you like about this place? Can you can you mention some things that you thought was really good? And I've also seen this in the reviews. Actually, I've seen these tags show up in the reviews. And I can't see them right now for this particular listing, but I'm pretty sure that's another thing that they do. You can also search through the reviews now. So yeah, I think creating better matches is obviously an improvement to the system. It's an improvement to matching the the demands of the customer with whatever the host can provide. So I think that's definitely an improvement. And I mean, going back to we're talking about the difference between Airbnb and other platforms, and this is one of the things that Airbnb excels at. They're very innovative. They always come up with new things, trying to improve their system, trying to improve the website, and so that's one of the reasons why I'm a big believer in the future of Airbnb. Even though the governments are cracking down every now and then, and there's some new rules. I think it's just a period where the authorities and people are trying to figure out how they want to deal with this new concept.
Yeah,
and eventually it will just kind of like converge into some sort of status quo where then everything is pretty clear, and hosts will know what the rules are. The local authorities will know better, what kind of effects the Airbnb community has on the city and how much revenue they get from it as well. And so, it, like you said, it's just going to be a bit different. It's going to be a little bit more rules and stuff, but I definitely still see Airbnb as a huge opportunity for a lot of people.
Yeah, and I mean the thing about Airbnb is that in the last 9 to 12 months, based on the data that I've got from the things I was running through earlier, in the cities that I've been analyzing, there's been a 40% increase in total listings. So the popularity of hosting your property on Airbnb is going through the roof. There's been a marginal decrease in the average price that you can get. I mean, it's gone down by sort of 10%, which, in some cases it's gone up, in some cases it's gone down much more than that. But the thing about this matching service that's running in the background, my biggest concern at the start of this year for Airbnb hosts was that so many of them, because they've got no digital marketing experience, they've got no background necessarily in understanding how to market a vacation rental, or build their own website and market it themselves. All of the value that the Airbnb service has as a host to their listings. And if you think about that increase in property, an obvious decrease in sort of average price that you can charge per property, then hopefully a service like this means that as they continue to expand, if they get really good at matching guests with hosts, then it will mean that you'll be able to charge a good amount of money, as opposed to having to try and compete with your next door neighbor. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Makes a lot of sense.
And I think the power of this stuff that you will never see, and as a guest you have no idea, unless you are interested in how websites and these sorts of things are put together. A guest is not going to have any idea why they're seeing a certain listing. They're going to think it's based on the relevance to them, and it is. It's probably more relevant to them than they will know. And I hope that what that does is makes Airbnb a sustainable option, and that it means that we will, as it continues to become more popular, and as everybody, I first saw this when they integrated the hosts and the guests into the same app. Right. As soon as I realized that you could switch between hosts and guests on the app by just one button, that signified to me that what they're actually aiming for is for everyone to be on Airbnb as a host and a guest, and that you use it as a guest to go and travel places, and then you use it as a host to let other people in, and you can do both of those simultaneously while on the move. Probably more akin to what you have spent some time doing, Jasper. So yeah, I think overall the matching thing, it sounds like if they're able to pull it off, it's using machine learning to match hosts and guests, and I think that is going to be, the effects of that could be massively positive, and it means that you're going to be able to continue to charge a competitive price without needing to worry too much about bringing people to your listing. So that's a really good one. Another big announcement that they made, and this is something that this is a part of the Airbnb sort of ecosphere that I am very familiar with. Airbnb have launched an update to their guidebooks. Right now, obviously at Pearlshare, as soon as we saw this, everybody was on the Airbnb website looking at this, reading about it, trying to find out what they're doing, because it's something that we have been doing and filling that gap. And the thing with the new guidebooks is that you basically you can go in. I've had a go at creating one. They're quite good fun to try and set up. And what they are doing, if you watch the video on the Live There page that Brian Tusky shows, he basically takes a comparison of TripAdvisor on the left-hand side and the top things that are recommended to do in Paris on TripAdvisor. And then he takes the things that they have taken from their guidebook, where they've got sort of 3.5 million recommendations from hosts, and compares the two lists next to each other. And obviously on the TripAdvisor side, you've got, the Eiffel Tower, you've got the Sacre-Cœur, you've got all of the things, go to the Louvre and see the Mona Lisa, all of the most touristy things. And on the right-hand side in the Airbnb column, you've got 5 places that you've never heard of. And again, like, what that signifies to me is more than just the feature of the guidebooks, because if I'm honest, I still don't think that they've nailed that. I think they've made it slightly easier to create a guidebook as a host, but I think the way that they're surfacing them to guests, and the way that you can, the sort of features that you can use to sort of save that information or come back and refer to it later on and stuff, I'm not worried about it as a competitor. Yeah, I still think the Pearlshare is superior, but obviously I'm biased. But what it signifies to me is that Airbnb are thinking outside of your home now. They have taken the concept, if you think about what hosting is, you spend a lot of time thinking about the inside of your house. You spend a lot of time thinking about how to best convey that through your listing. And then, you've got a lot of companies that are working on, making sure that your guests get their keys, making sure that they have a clean home to walk into, all that sort of thing. What Airbnb are thinking about now is taking control of the experience that the guest has. As soon as they walk through your front door and out into your neighborhood, what are they trying to do? What are they trying to find? And what can you as a host provide to them with your local knowledge that makes their experience better? And maybe that is sharing a guide of places that are near to you that you enjoy, and that other local people that enjoy, but that might be overlooked by tourists. That seems to be the concept of this whole Live There campaign. And so I find that really interesting, and that's something that they've announced. The guidebooks are going to be part of the Airbnb system. There's still a few obvious flaws, I think, in that, but they've only just announced it, and if there are other timelines or anything to go by, we probably won't see it really being adopted for people by hosts for another 9 to 12 months. But the other things that they're trialing that I think a lot of people aren't aware of are really exciting, and the most exciting of those is this city hosts idea. Now, Jasper, you seemed quite excited about this because I sent it in that email on Tuesday.
Absolutely.
Had you heard about it before, the city hosts?
I actually have not heard about it, but I think they've tried similar things in the past, right? Because I think the basic idea is that you have people coming into your house, and obviously those people want to do things. Yep. And as a host, you're sort of the first point of contact with the visitor in your city. So you're in an ideal position to to provide other services to the guests, like like be a tour guide or do all sorts of other things. And that's kind of what it is about, right? It's about being the host in the city, not just in your apartment or house.
That's right. And it's taken, as you say, they've definitely tried it before. So there's a host from San Francisco that is really, really active on Pearlshare, and I speak to her quite a lot. And she's actually taken part in one or maybe two of their experiments, their sort of pilot schemes around this. It used to be called Experiences, and I think recently they've sort of changed the name to City Hosts. But essentially, it's using the Airbnb marketplace to allow hosts to provide local experiences to guests. And this is the important distinction. I don't think you have to stay with the host that is hosting the trip. I think that the hosting of the trip and of an Airbnb property, I think, are two different things. And I think that you are able to host a trip without necessarily having the people that come on your trip stay in your home, which is very interesting, right? So she has been running like tours of the vineyards and wineries in like Sonoma and around parts of California, Napa Valley, that sort of thing. And she has been hosting groups of people, and they aren't people that are staying with her, I don't think. So yeah, that opens up a huge amount. And anyone that's got any sort of expertise or local knowledge can think about. And there is a place that you can sign up that I think I've linked to in that email. I'll try and dig out the link for you, Jasper, so that you can include it in the show notes for this. But yeah, it's such an interesting concept that you're able to offer more than just a place to stay. But I can't work out how you would do the financial side of that. I don't know how you could turn a profit on that without hosting. For me, you have to be working with bigger groups than just the two people that are coming to stay with you. Like, unless you're charging an extortionate amount of money to go and do something incredible, if you're doing a walking tour, or you're touring a couple of local galleries, or something that's accessible that a lot of people are going to be able to do. I don't know. I haven't quite worked out how the commercial side of that is going to work.
I think opening it up to people who are not staying with you but are on Airbnb somewhere else in the city is something that will really help, right? Because then you have access to quite a lot of people, and I really love the idea. I think it's great. Yeah. And
what would you do? What would you do if you were putting on a trip or an experience?
Well, I'm already thinking, I'm already thinking in Santiago in Chile, because my life as an Airbnb host in Amsterdam might be short-lived. But for example, organizing a trip to the beach could be something. There it's like, I don't know, maybe like an hour drive. You rent a van or something, and you organize a whole day, maybe some sightseeing, or a local a tour around some cool bars, like a pub crawl is what you guys call it in England, right? A pub crawl. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
So if there's a lot of English tourists, then that should be a hit. For the French, maybe like some wine tasting opportunities, like go to some nice wine bars, or there's tons of stuff you can think about. And I really like the idea, because it just empowers the host to do more with their home than just renting out the space. And the other thing that I find really interesting is the providing dinners. I know that Airbnb has tried this in the past as well. They've run this pilot where hosts can basically provide dinners to their guests, but not only to their guests, also to other Airbnb hosts. I think there's a couple platforms actually. There's Eat With, and there's
Visit in France.
Yeah, there's a bunch of
we do actually. I actually went along to one of those in Paris while I was at the Open. Airbnb organised a load of those with a company called Visit, and it was wicked. It was amazing. We had I know a couple of other people that also went on similar evenings, didn't have quite as good a time as we did. So we turned up. I think it started at sort of 7 o'clock. We managed to arrive about an hour late because of the taxis and stuff. We were meant to finish at 11 o'clock, and I think we went on till 3 in the morning. And since then, the person that hosted the evening, lovely lady called Alison, who hosted us in Paris, has actually come over to London, and I took her for a coffee, and we caught up since. So yeah, I think you're right. I'm all for dinner parties. I think that dinner parties they're so closely aligned. It's so very similar to having someone come and stay in your house. Come and do a dinner party for 6 or 7 people, and if you can cook and you're interested in meeting new people, then I think that there's huge potential for that one. But it's getting people out and into the local area that I think there will be plenty of people that will take them up on doing it. But I think that they just need to help hosts by prompting the sort of things that you could do or could offer with just a little bit of local knowledge. It's a really exciting move. I think anything that is offering experiences during the trip, it's more touch points for Airbnb to be in touch with the guest. And I also, I wonder whether the implications of that will be that if the guest is in touch with Airbnb more often, whether they'll be able to take some of the review process and break it down so that it happens over the trip. Now, I'm thinking about this. Like, my background in sort of apps and websites and stuff is quite a lot. I've been quite heavily involved with Pearlshare's product side, and thinking about the sort of features and things. And I had this thought the other day about what Airbnb needs. And I think if they're going to be talking to the guests and the hosts during the stay more, then they need to start capturing what I would describe as moments. So the things that go well and the things that go badly, as opposed to waiting until the end and reviewing at the end of the trip. It's whether they can get those, whether they can capture the amazing thing that happened, minutes after it happened, or if there's been some sort of problem, whether that can be captured at the time and not, waiting for a scathing review from somebody. Because I think that if you're able to sort of capture and deal with stuff at the time, if it's a negative thing, then, I hear it all the time. Hosts have some problem right at the start with a guest, then they resolve it and they go on and have a really great week with them, and they get a negative review, or they get a review where it's not, the fact that they solved the problem isn't mentioned. And if you're introducing a load of new features where the host and the guests are going to be using the Airbnb app more, then perhaps you can introduce things that spread out that review. And it can kind of be like, how was your day today versus how was your entire trip? And then you can average out over the days, and probably I would imagine that would mean more positive reviews.
Yeah, I like that.
What do you think?
Yeah, I definitely like the idea, because realistically, when people write their reviews, it's usually a few days after they've gotten home, or like a week later even. I guess the window is up to 2 weeks, and you look back at your experience, and what do you remember? All right, people are always going to remember that one thing that went wrong, and they might not remember, like you said, the cool little things that happened that sort of get lost in memory after a while. So I definitely like the idea. I mean, basically what you want is a review to be the most accurate representation of the experience that you've had, right? Yeah. And so experiences are always like, the sooner you capture it, the better.
But it's also, I mean, it's also, if you think about the long term, if you're capturing moments as they happen, it does two things. Airbnb are great at telling stories, right? You look at anything that they put out, any advertising campaign, whatever, the stories are incredible, and the storytelling is really, really high quality. And anything that they do, any kind of ad campaign, they always go out and search for real hosts, and they will tell the real hosts. And in putting together these guidebooks and putting together their sort of neighborhood guides, They've gone out and done all this original photography, and they're really good at telling stories. If you introduced something like that, which was capturing more regularly, capturing stories from guests, A, you can deal with the problems quicker. That's great. But B, from a storytelling side, you can capture all of that. You can capture the stories as they happen, and promote them to other guests and stuff. But you can also use it as a remarketing tool later on, saying, so have you seen on Facebook? I don't know if this is just in my circles on Facebook or whether this is something that affects everybody, but time hop. You familiar with time hop?
I'm not.
So like all of my Facebook posts recently are people, my friends, posting reminders from a year ago or 4 years ago or 10 years ago, where Facebook has basically been saying, oh, this photo that got loads of likes back in 2003, do you remember this? And it's, whatever your update was at the time as well. And it's basically trying to remind people of the great events that they have captured on Facebook. Now, if Airbnb had something like this, where I'm at a wine tasting with a host, I'm having a great time, and I've got a picture because the camera on my phone is amazing now. I've got a good picture of me and the host, having fun together, and I can save that on the app and I can tag them in it. A year later, they can say, hey, you remember when you were in Paris and you went on that wine tasting? Why don't you think about booking a trip and go and visit your friend back in Paris again? So it's things like that will mean that hosts will be able to. The way I see it going, Jasper, basically, is that as an Airbnb host, they are going to basically encourage you to have a select group of people that come and stay with you regularly. Right, that you're always open to new guests, but I think one of the biggest opportunities that's there at the moment that they aren't taking advantage of is repeat journeys, repeat business. People coming back to your Airbnb again because they had a good time the first time. Some people will do that anyway. It's in their nature. Some people, once they've gone and had a good trip in I don't know, down in Cornwall in England, they might go back to that same cottage the next year or try and book it again. Right, because that's it. But Airbnb does nothing to encourage that, as far as I've seen. There's nothing that says, why don't you go and stay in the place that you've already stayed? And I don't know if this is the case for everybody, but I can still message the person that I hosted in October before going to the Airbnb Open. I can still send them a message, and it's one of the tips that I gave to a couple of hosts that was saying, reporting that they had low bookings, was you've got a directory of people that have already decided that your place was good enough to go and stay in. So why don't you go and get back in touch with them? Now, I don't know if there's rules against that. I haven't looked too heavily into the terms of service for Airbnb, but I'm pretty sure that the likelihood that someone is going to, want to stay with you, if they've already stayed with you, that could only increase, surely, unless they had a terrible time, in which case don't message them. But if you've got a 5-star review from someone, getting back in touch with them and saying, hey, I don't know if you're thinking of coming back to London this year, but if you are, I'd love to have you again. I'd love to see you again. We had a great time. And then if you think about, if they were able to introduce a feature that lets you capture those stories as they happen, then you could say, and, I'd love to go back to that bar that we went to and had that great time in. Does that all make sense?
Yeah, it's an interesting thought. I've never thought about that, actually, messaging former guests.
Well, I mean, so I've done marketing for last couple of years, and the first place to start is always any existing list of people that you've got. They say there's all this advice when you're starting a business, and it's like, the first customers that you get will be your friends and family, because they're the closest to you. Well, on Airbnb, if you've been hosting for a year and you have a couple of people in a week, then you've got more than 100 people that you can get back in touch with that have already they've already looked at your listing. You've already got some relationship with them, and you can capitalize that on that again. And, maybe they will say no, but maybe one or two say yes. And maybe that fills out part of your calendar.
and makes
You
you feel a
definitely
bit better
put-
about doing it.
Yeah, you definitely put yourself back on the radar, because even if they don't want to stay, if they're not coming back,
Exactly. Or
you know,
pass
maybe-
it on to your friends. Yeah,
exactly. You know, it's a way to put yourself back on the map, put yourself on the radar. So I think that's a really good suggestion, actually. And again, I also don't know if it's against the rules of Airbnb, but I imagine
you can do
it's
it.
not.
If I can do it, if I can still get in touch with people from 6 months ago, then other people must be able to do that as well.
Yeah, for sure.
And you know, these things, I'm not condoning breaking the rules. I'm not condoning breaking the law, but if you can do it, then why wouldn't you be doing it?
Yeah, and
know,
it's the same. It's the same principle. It's better to just do and then see if somebody's going to stop you than to worry about is this allowed or not. And
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
John, I
Great
gotta end this talk. It's been super interesting to talk to you and to discuss all these different topics.
Yeah,
and
no problem.
definitely will get you back on. But for now, we're gonna have to finalize this episode. So really, thanks a lot.
No problem.
It's been really good, and I'm sure the listeners have found it really interesting. We've discussed a lot. I just want to mention one thing before I'll let you guys go, is that I have a Facebook group. It's called Airbnb Academy, and I've been running it for a while, and it's always been a secret group. It has 170 members right now, but I decided to just kind of open it up to get some more people, get some more hosts into the group as the community is growing. So if you want to be part of the Facebook group, and it's basically a group where we discuss all sorts of Airbnb related topics. You can ask any questions, and I think, John, you're in the group, are you?
I'm in the group now. Yeah,
You're in the group
I
too.
just got the notification that you changed it from secret to closed.
Exactly. So yeah, it's if you want to be part of the group, just go on Facebook, search for Airbnb Academy, and then you should be able to find the group, and just send me a request, and then I will let you in the group. Other than that, thanks for listening. I'm interested to know if you like this type of podcast episode. I'm trying to do something new and trying to see what people like. So feel free to reach out to me at jasper@getpaidforyourpet.com and let me know what you think. And if I get a lot of positive reactions, then maybe we'll end up doing a weekly or a monthly digest or something like that. So
Be good to get together again, wouldn't it?
yeah, absolutely. It's always interesting to talk to you, John.
Yeah, and you. And I'll just get a quick couple of plugs in. The best place to share local recommendations with your guests is pearlshare.com. Go there, sign up for free. It's all completely free. There's no advertising. There's nothing on there that's nefarious. We're all coming from a good place, and we're going to help you make some really good recommendations to your guests. And then the other thing is to follow us on Twitter. You can follow Pearlshare. You can follow me, John M.A. Bauer, on Twitter. If you follow me, you'll see my pinned tweet at the moment is this weekly Airbnb email. It applies to all holiday rental hosts, really. It's not just Airbnb stuff, but because they're the market leader, like that's tends to be where I take most of the inspiration from. And yeah, make sure that you follow Jasper and all the stuff that he's doing, and come and get involved in that Facebook group, because there's a lot of different Facebook groups out there, but this one seems to be really good quality. So come and join in.
Awesome. Well, thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll be back next week on Monday with another episode. So we'll see you then.
Get paid for your pet. 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 Get paid for your pet.